So, today I want to talk about the concept of perfection and what it actually means, and how you and I both can be perfect. Living in America, you hear the phrases all the time like nobody can be perfect, and the only thing that's perfect is some deity that exists beyond us. And, the human race and the natural world will always be imperfect. That there's no such thing as perfection. And especially you hear this in the romantic world that you have to love your partner for their perfections and their imperfections, and that you can't judge anyone because nobody's perfect and things like that. And epistemologically, this conceptualization of perfection is ultimately very dangerous and problematic for us humans, and how we think about the world and how we think about the concept. First and foremost, if a concept exists, it ought to serve as a function, a cognitive function, to help us understand further the world, and we can be able to know our place within it so we can make more informed decisions. But if we have the conceptualization of perfect, and yet we also simultaneously recognize that perfection does not apply to the material world that we exist in, then is it really a concept? Is it really a thing? Could we just do away with it altogether? And if perfection is a real thing, then under what context necessitates the conceptualization of the concept perfect? And I want to be able to talk about that concept with us today, or with you today. And so the concept of perfect really refers to the full range satisfaction of certain standards, that there is nowhere where it lacks. It completely fulfills these standards of what we're referring to. And when people are talking about the imperfection of humans, right? We're imperfect because we're not omniscient robots, and we're not programmed, and we make mistakes, and therefore we're not perfect and whatnot. But I like to do away entirely with this conceptualization. I think this is a total misunderstanding of perfection. And first and foremost, the reason why it's a misunderstanding, the reason why it's problematic, is because it reverses what concepts are supposed to do. As I've hinted earlier, concepts serve a cognitive function for us to understand the world. And so, what the concept of perfection, at least in what I've been talking about so far, and what's socially popular, is that people have conceptualized the concept of perfect up here. The perfect means this up here. And then they try to apply this concept to reality, and they realize that it doesn't fit. And so instead of changing the concept, what they do is that they sacrifice the world that we live in and forces us to meet the standards of this world that doesn't exist. And when there's a mismatch, they hold on. They hold on to the concept and regard it to be valid. And they like to demonize us, and they like to demonize other people, and they like to demonize the rest of the world. But this is a total immoral and evil reversal of what concepts are and how we're supposed to operate as human beings. The the the, the framework should be completely reversed. And so if we're going to reverse the process of conceptualizing the concept of perfect, what does it look like? Well, what does perfect actually mean? And so perfect, as I've said before, is the entire satisfaction, the entirety of satisfying certain standards where it's not lackluster. And the only way that this is possible is that these standards can't be omniscient, right? The way we develop standards are within context. The standards that you can apply to LeBron James is not the standards you could objectively and validly and appropriately apply to me, because I'm not LeBron James. I don't have the same training. Our standards are different. You can hold me to certain standards, civil standards like the laws and stuff like that, but you would expect that these standards are actually raised for a police officer, because they have developed skills and abilities and knowledge that helps them advance civility. And so thus their standards should be higher as opposed to regular people like me and other people. And so the context of standards is very important in this conceptualization. You can't sit there and say that, well, the standards for me when it comes to sports or art or anything else is the same exact standards to a 5-year-old, right? So standards are contextual. You only raise your standards when you have a new set of context to evaluate. And the new set of context is also understanding who you are as a person, how much knowledge, skills, qualities, virtues, and attributes that you have developed for yourself. Because once you develop a new threshold of those things, the context now changes. And when the context changes, so too the standards. This is why we have K through 12, because the standards of kindergarten is not the same of being in 12th grade. And so you may score perfectly as a kindergartner, but that doesn't mean it's perfect by the standards of being a senior in high school. And this is correctly and appropriately so, because again, it's different context. And so the reason why this is ultimately important is because when we're talking about the concept of perfection, the perfection depends on the standards that you are able to set as a person. And the standards that you as a person is able to set is dependent on, one, where are you? Is it time sensitive? Right? What qualities and attributes do you have for yourself? Right? This is why comparison doesn't make sense here, because two people are in two different time zones and they have different everything. And so having the same standards doesn't make sense. So when you are talking about and wanting to be perfect, you have to be able to set standards that are perfectly conformed to your current skill set and demands the maximization of that skill set. And if you have the ability to utilize that skill set that you currently have to its maximum potential, and you hit every single threshold, every single standard that you set for yourself, if you achieve all of that, that is perfection. You are perfectly you. That's what perfection means. You are perfectly the thing in question. This is perfect. Why? Because it's exactly what it is. It's perfect. There is no other standard that you can compare this to besides of what it is. It is what it is. And if you wish to be perfect, you have to be perfectly you, which is the full maximization and the effort and the energy and time that you put into something in order to set standards that are uniquely tailored to you, that demands that energy and time and that perfection. That's what perfection means. So we can be perfect.